Jordan Sheridan, Status Coup. I am wonderfully joined again by Melissa Mays, a Flint resident, an activist who has had her phone blown up the last 3 days, the last 5 years actually, but the last 3 days. There's two different things that we need to go through today. Number one, the Attorney General of Michigan, Dana Nessel, who had a press conference today. She handed it over to her Solicitor General, who announced charges against former Governor Rick Snyder and 8 other defendants. But at the same time, there is a story that myself and Jen, my partner, worked on that, interestingly, they didn't mention. And I don't think they particularly want mentioned. But we're going to do our darndest to get out there. It just so happens that yesterday, when I sent a request for comment to the Attorney General for the story, which ended up going out on The Intercept, the link is right under this live stream video. What do you know? Half hour after I emailed them for comment, that the nature of the charges against Governor Snyder leaked. So it seems that they rushed out ahead of time what the charges were going to be before our story with The Intercept could go out. So I'm going to get into our story with The Intercept, which, as far as I know, and now has been backed up by 2 other sources, which we're going to talk about. But before we get into anything, I wanted to ask you, as a resident, for those that don't know, Melissa lived in Flint when the water was switched in 2014. She's got 3 kids. They've all been made sick because of the water. You've had major health problems because of the water. What is your initial reaction to Governor Snyder being charged with 2 counts of willful neglect of duty, which in Michigan is a misdemeanor? You could face upwards of a year in jail with a $1,000 fine.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive that basically it sounds like he forgot to send in, put a cover sheet on his TPS report. It was, I was saying, like when you and I talked the other day, that I was, I couldn't let myself get excited because of the fact that I knew that it would most likely be something like jaywalking tickets. Somebody had told me that speeding fines are actually more than what he's getting levied. And that basically it was going to be I went from saying a slap on the wrist to a tap, because a slap would actually sting. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. I don't even think that's the right word for it. The fact that he was going to basically be facing a $1,000 fine, which if you do the simple math, it's 1 cent, 1 penny per poisoned person in Flint. I mean, dude poisoned 100,000 people. And let me just be clear that it wasn't just our pipes got old over time. Governor Snyder, after the residents of Michigan had voted his, Public Act for his emergency manager law down, overwhelmingly voted against it, he pushed he made a few alterations and attached a $30,000 appropriation so it couldn't come back up for a referendum, his Public Act 436, which is his version of the emergency manager law, which allowed him to take unilateral control over cities like Flint, Benton Harbor, and Detroit, and then put in his own person, an appointed, unelected bean counter, basically, to make all the decisions, to suspend local democracy and take away our voices and the people we voted for and make these decisions, like switching the water, refusing to treat it, and to cover it up. So basically the man became, appointed himself dictator, and he was all kind of bragging about, look at the successes of my emergency manager law, while just basically looking away from all the damages. And I'm like, I'm sorry, that's not how this works. When you decide to take control over a city, you get the, and what did he say? The buck stops with me? Well, apparently it doesn't. Apparently he's going to point the finger at everybody else and then just get handed a basic parking ticket and walk away for poisoning 100,000 people, making our futures far more difficult, damaging our immune systems, making us far more susceptible to COVID-19, and then also killing countless people. I thought murder was a crime. I thought that killing people wasn't legal and it wasn't something you get a slap on the wrist for. Apparently not. And so basically it's telling us here in Flint that, guess what? You're worth 1 cent. 1 single penny, and that's the max fine. So who knows if he's going to get a discount or whatever. But yeah, so basically it's saying that, rich white men at Ann Arbor, Michigan can go ahead and, poison, beat, kill, lie about the damage being done to poor Black and brown bodies. And apparently that hasn't changed. And we're going to fight like hell, and with your help, to make that change. I mean, Flint's made history for lots of things, let's sit down strikes. And of course, the water crisis, that's been going on for 2,456 days and counting. And so hopefully we can start to make that change where wealthy white folks, politicians or not, can't just, let a city die, and that they've caused by their own policies. You can't murder people by policy and then walk away and say, oh, I was just doing my job, and we can get rid of this whole governmental immunity thing, because there's far too many criminals hiding behind it.
So, Melissa, apologies that I'm about to give the audience a history lesson that you already know, but I want the audience to fully understand everything before we set up what the original investigators had found. So for those that don't know, in 2016, the then Attorney General of Michigan, he was a Republican, his name was Bill Schuette, he announced a criminal investigation into the Flint water crisis. Of course, 2014, the water is switched. There's a lot of reasons why they did that, but they did not add the proper chemicals into the water to prevent lead from leaching from the pipes into the water. Children, adults poisoned. There was also a deadly Legionella outbreak, which is a waterborne illness that killed, by the state's number, 12 people. That's nonsense. That probably killed hundreds of people. We'll never fully know the true death count from Legionella because a lot of entities covered it up. But in 2016, the Republican Attorney General, Bill Schuette, announces a criminal investigation. He hired a outside special prosecutor. Just think about it like Robert Mueller was an outside special prosecutor. This was kind of like the Robert Mueller of Flint, the special prosecutor. His name was Todd Flood. And Todd Flood's investigation started in 2016, and it went to 2019. He had a team, I would guess, between 20 to 30 investigators and prosecutors. They charged 15 officials with this between the state of Michigan and the city of Flint. They charged Nick Lyon, who was the health director for Snyder. They charged the chief medical executive, Eden Wells, with involuntary manslaughter, both of them. They charged several officials from the state environmental department. They charged city of Flint officials. They charged emergency managers who were appointed by Governor Snyder. And in 2019, when the new government came in, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, a Democrat, and Attorney General Dana Nessel came in. Dana Nessel fired the original special prosecutor and his team. She cited major flaws in their investigation, as well as major flaws in the amount of evidence they compiled. So that is the split. There was an investigation from 2016 to 2019 with a special prosecutor, his team, and then the new attorney general, a Democrat, came in and essentially purged the entire thing and started over. So I and Jen, this really was a year worth of an investigation. It started with our story in Vice, where we broke a lot of news about what Snyder knew and when he knew. But over a year of investigating, including recently where I drove 9 hours straight during a pandemic to Michigan and then 9 hours back, we discovered that the original investigators who were fired, so this special prosecutor, the original investigators that were fired by the attorney general, again, can't get in her head. I don't, just take her word for it, why she fired them, that they had found evidence to charge Governor Snyder with misconduct in office, which can be charged as a felony. It can be charged as a misdemeanor. My understanding, it was going to be charged as a felony misconduct in office, which has upwards of 5 years in prison. They were going to charge him with neglect of duty, which is the misdemeanor that he was charged with today. And at the time of their firing, I have at least 4 sources with the criminal investigation that they were building a case to charge him with involuntary manslaughter, which is an obvious major felony. It carries with it at least 15 years in prison. And they were not done. My understanding is they were, a loose number, let's say 75 to 80% the way there, but they were not done. And they had defendants cooperating to, I guess, potentially flip on higher people up the totem pole, but they were dismissed. So with that background, and I'm going to get to what those investigators found, but with that background, I just want to show you, you don't have to take my word for it. This came out today. There's two other journalists. One goes by the name Kayla. This is Kayla Ruble. She was one of the reporters on a great story PBS Frontline did. They did a great story on the Legionella outbreak that killed, by PBS's count, could have killed as many as 115 people. She wrote, she was one of those reporters with PBS, important details about the path former Flint water crisis criminal investigators were on before the special prosecutor was ousted by Attorney General Nessel in 2019. I could independently confirm they built a felony involuntary manslaughter case against Snyder. So that is a PBS reporter confirming what Jen and I just broke yesterday. Then you have Charlie LaDuff, who is a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist in Michigan, a badass, might I add. He wrote, I too can independently confirm that special prosecutors were building an involuntary manslaughter case against Governor Snyder. Moreover, they were assembling a racketeering case, which is usually against the mafia. Both seem to have vaporized with today's charges. Read this excellent story by Jordan Sheridan.
Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.